Uh, for those that don't know me, my name is Warren Rendon, and I'm the General Manager of CAS 360 Ecosystem and UK at BGL, and I'll be taking you through the session today. So before I get started, just to talk a little bit about BGL's other products. So obviously CAS 360, which many of you will be connecting or connected to for BGLiD for our company compliance, company secretarial work, Simple Fund 360 for our SMSF administration, Simple Invest for all of our investment portfolios, and the newest product, Smart Docs 360, which is an AI-powered paper-to-data solution that you should check out and have a look at. Anyway, let's move on to BGLiD, and I'll just talk about what's going to be covered in this morning's session or today's session. So first of all, I'm going to talk a bit about what BGLiD is. If this is the first time that you've seen BGLiD in action, I'll talk a little bit about how it all works and why you should use BGLiD. I'll also talk a little bit about what's new to BGLiD and what we've added over the course of 2024. And then obviously the big one, biometric scanning, which is a big reason for today's session. And that's what I'll be talking about and also demonstrating as well. And then I'll talk about a little bit about what's next. So what's coming for 2025 for BGLiD, and also pricing, which is obviously all very important to all of us. So what is BGLiD? So BGLiD is a new client identity verification service. So it focuses on verifying the identity documents of your clients. And because it's made by BGLiD, we've designed it specifically for accounting firms and accounting practices. So really trying to, instead of being an ID application that is everything to everyone, we wanted to really specify that the ID application focuses on accounting practices and the requirements of accounting practices. So it can be dedicated towards accounting firms. Now, BGLiD is actually built into your BGL applications. It's actually built into CAS 360. It's a separate application built by BGL, but you can access it through CAS 360. So you don't need another software application in your practice. It's all connected into CAS 360. And all ID data can be linked to the contacts in CAS 360. So not only will those contacts have all their company and trust information, they'll also have all of their identity information, as well as their AML screening and things like that. It will be coming to Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360 very soon. The team have been working on that over the last few months, and yeah, you'll get a bit of a you'll see that in early next year that BGLiD is linked into Simple Fund and Simple Invest 360 as well. One of the advantages of all of this is that there's no extensive setup or new training required. Because we've built it into the BGL applications, it becomes essentially another feature within those applications. And you just need to add a credit card to start using it. If your firm already has a credit card attached to their BGL account, then it will use that, or a direct debit method, then it will use that. For BGLiD, we bill at the end of the first day of the next month, all of the transactions that took place in that previous month. So it's very easy to get started and start using. So I want to talk a little bit about how BGLiD works. And when it comes to identity verification, there are a lot of products in the market, but not all of them do the same thing. And I know that might sound a little bit odd, but with BGLiD, what we have really focused on, and what some other apps may not focus on so much, is verifying the documents with the issuer. So what BGLiD has done, or what we've done with BGLiD, is build an integration effectively with the DVS, so the Document Verification Service in Australia. I know we've got a few New Zealand firms joining us in the session as well. They've got obviously the New Zealand equivalent. I think it's the DIA, but I might have got that wrong. But anyway, we've built an integration with the equivalent over there as well. Now for Australia, we can verify passports, we can verify driver's licenses, and we can verify Medicare cards. So these are effectively the three main sources of ID verification. And really with passports and driver's licenses, they are key because they contain photographic ID. So you were able to obviously have a little bit more extensive, and that's where biometrics comes in with those documents. But right now today, when a new client joins your practice, as per the TPB requirements in Australia, there is an ID verification requirement. There is a requirement for you to check the ID of that individual. Now, there are obviously many ways to satisfy the requirements, and one of them is a physical check of the ID. But you can do a physical check of the ID, or you can use BGLiD to go and actually verify that that ID is a legitimate ID and it has been verified by the issuer. Okay, so that's really where the really important part of that ID verification comes in, is that we are verifying with the issuer of the passport or driver's license or Medicare. We're not doing some sort of scan to make it, I suppose, to see if it looks like it verifies. We actually verify with the source. Also, every single BGLiD verification completes AML screening. So AML is anti-money laundering. And in some of the regions, so New Zealand in particular, this is a mandatory check, and maybe in Australia coming 2026. So what our AML screening includes is PEP, so politically exposed persons. So does someone have a high position or a potential exposure to someone in a high government position? Also, the global sanctions. So are there any global sanctions on this particular individual? Certainly if you're dealing with, individuals from overseas or things like that, potentially people that have been overseas or done business overseas, is there a potential sanction on that person? And also global watch lists. So that is all included in each BGLiD screening by default. And then what we're also able to do is complete a adverse media screening. Now, there is an additional cost for this, but you are able to do adverse media screening, or essentially just media. I mean, the adverse part is obviously important, but it will find positive articles as well, potentially. But we'll go through a whole media screening of that individual as well. So what we're doing there is checking any media databases for any articles. And obviously with BGLiD, when a person is flagged for PEP or global sanctions or watch list, you will get a link to that particular article or particular appointment, so that you actually will have a source reference. And obviously if there is any adverse media on that individual, you do get a link to the media article as well, so you're able to actually read the media article. Obviously these links are really important when it comes to dealing with the concept of false positives. And if you've got a client named John Smith, chances are there's someone else named John Smith that might not have done something all that good. Anyway, this is all done through our provider, Frankie One. So Frankie One are an Australian business as well, but they effectively are a big player in the ID and AML place or industry, I guess. And you receive an instant result. So when you are doing these checks, it doesn't take 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. You receive an instant result coming into CAS 360 with all of the information included. So was the ID verified? Did it pass or fail? And were there any AML hits? For example, you'll be able to see all of that in an instant result, and it comes through on the BGLiD ID verification report. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come through. So I'll talk a little bit about how BGLiD works, and we have implemented 2 types of verifications. We understand that in practices, there might be different methods in which you're collecting the data, and I guess more than anything, different tolerances to how much data you're willing to keep on file. So what we've developed is 2 types. So we've got request ID verification. Okay, now this is the demonstration that I'll go through, is the request ID verification flow. But this is effectively where, as a practice, we are sending our client an email asking them to complete an ID verification. So your client will receive an email, they'll be able to click on their link and go through the process of completing an ID verification through BGLiD. What this process means is that you as an accounting firm never touch or see the ID. Now, if that's really important to you, and I suppose a lot of the TPB recommendations go in this direction, this means that you are able to get your clients to verify their identity documents without you ever touching the document and storing and recording the document. Okay, so if that is a really important element for you, certainly the request ID verification flow has been built specifically for that in mind, so that the ID data is never stored in your systems. You just get an ID verification result. Step 2, obviously, verify ID. Option 2 obviously does the opposite. This is where you actually are able to key in the identity data Okay, so you can key in the driver's license or the passport particulars and simply click verify ID and you get an instant result. Now, this is great if that client is in your office. So if that client is sitting in your office today and you say, thanks, mate, let me check your driver's license. You can take the driver's license, you can physically see it. You can type in the details into CAS 360 and click verify, and you'll get an instant result that that driver's license is a legitimate and verified driver's license. So it really comes down to which direction your practice wants to take the ID verifications, but we've built both processes so that, so that more than anything, you are able to access those. Now, what's really important is that you're not able to run identity verifications without consent. So consent is obviously a really important part of ID verifications. So when you are running an ID check, you need to get consent. Obviously, consent is built into the request ID verification flow. Consent where you do a verify ID. Obviously, you have a toggle that says, have you been given consent? But certainly consent is important. Also, as I said, if there are any questions on any of this, type them into the Q&A and we will answer all of those questions that come through. So what's important is if you use the request ID verification, BGLiD does not store the identity data in BGL products. What you will actually receive back from the verification is that the results were verified. You'll get we will tell you what document that particular client used. So did they use a driver's license, for example? And we'll actually give you the expiry date of that document as well. Some of the laws in some of the regions actually require re-verification once a document has expired. So you'll get the results, so a pass or fail, you get the source document, the type of source document they used, and the expiry date. Okay, so that's all the information that you will receive, part of that request ID verification flow. You never actually have the passport numbers and the passport or the driver's license numbers. What's also important is we do give you the verified name of that particular person and the verified date of birth. So if that particular person's name happened to be different to the name that they gave you, that would be highlighted and shown to you. So say, for example, if a father and son decided to swap IDs, for example, they might have even had the same name. The date of birth verification will actually highlight that to you that maybe a different ID was used. In regards to AML and PEP information, okay, all of this information is public information. So it is all available effectively via a Google search. So it is public record. So all of your AML, PEP, adverse media, things like that will all be stored in and connected to that contacts record in CAS 360. Okay, and then again, that's all because it's public information. Just got a question here. Is it consent if we send the request for BGLiD and the client enters their detail? Yeah, Jody, it is, because when you use the request ID verification flow, obviously it's asking your client to key the data in. As soon as they key the data in, when they click submit, up comes a big consent screen. Okay, so if the client is using, or if you are using the request ID verification workflow, consent is built into that, because what we are doing is actually interacting directly with your client, and up will come a big consent screen. So the process actually won't proceed unless the client has clicked consent. So that's all built in. Obviously, the verify where you're just checking, that requires probably a little bit more of a explicit consent, I guess. So what I want to talk about is what we've added to BGLiD, I suppose since we first launched it in October 2023. So BGLiD not only does all the verification that I've touched on it, it has so much more that you can do with it. So first of all, we implemented a feature called automatic retry. Now this means if your client goes through their ID verification process using the request information flow, and for example, they put the wrong number or they put one wrong number into their ID verification and it fails, because one wrong number will make it fail. What we have built is what we call automatic retry. The system will automatically email the client so that their ID verification was unsuccessful. So that's an email template you can customize, and effectively they get a link to retry their ID verification. And that retry is done at no cost, no extra cost to the firm. So some ID providers will charge you twice in that instance, but with BGLiD, we give you two tries effectively, or your client two tries. We added Australian Medicare verification throughout the year, and we also added the ability to have two source document verifications. So when going through the ID verification of a client, you can now specify if you want your client to verify one document or if you want them to verify two documents. So you've got the ability to have two source document verification. We also, for our New Zealand clients, added New Zealand driver license verification. Okay, so you can now use a New Zealand driver's license as a verification source. New Zealand passports are a little bit more of a touchy subject with the DIA. If you are a firm from New Zealand on the call today, each firm actually has to get approval to access the New Zealand passports database. Once the firm has approval, we can add that to BGLiD, but each firm does need to go through that passport verification individually. Luckily for the Australian firms, it's all done centralized. So once BGLiD were verified, we are able to do it for all firms, but New Zealand, obviously, different country, different laws. We've also built in automatic email reminders. So if you are sending an ID email request to your client, and they have failed to complete the check within 4, 5, 6, 7 days, you can set up an automatic email so that the client is emailed every X amount of days until they have completed their ID verification request. So full automatic email reminders built in. And we've also added automated email confirmations. So once an ID verification has been completed by your client, so successfully completed, we will send them an email. Well, you can turn it off, but the system will send them an email saying that you, thank you for successfully completing your ID verification. So when your clients are completing their ID verifications, if it is successful, they'll get a successful email. If it's unsuccessful, they'll be asked to retry. This is all completely automated by the system. Also, our email templates as well. So it's very similar to CAS 360. You have full control over the email templates. Obviously, when it comes to ID verification, clients might get a little bit touchy. So adding your firm's logo, adding your firm's branding and messaging to the email can be very important because it can sort of add legitimacy to it because it is a legitimate email. Our BGLiD outbox. So what we have added here is you have one screen in CAS 360 where you can see all of your ID verification requests. So one global screen where you can see every single request and its status. So at the click of a button, you can see how many ID verifications you've done, how many are still pending, and even how many have been successful versus failed, for example. We've also added a number of BGLiD reports. So you are able to run reports across, so this is sort of across the whole BGLiD application. So you can run a listing report and get a list of all of your IDs that have been verified and things like that as well. And the last one, biometric scanning. So let's talk a little bit about biometric scanning in BGLiD, because this again is a really powerful feature and a really powerful way of verifying IDs for your clients. So the first thing to understand with BGLiD biometric scanning is it's a second authentication that we have added. So we've tried to continue the existing product, so the existing ID verification with the DVS, and then add a biometric scan on top of that. And that's really important because some providers will do one and not the other. With BGLiD, we're really focused on delivering both. So the BGLiD biometric scan, at its first level, it will still verify the ID document with the DVS or the DIA in New Zealand. So it will verify the ID document with the issuer. So you will know that it is a legitimately issued ID document. Okay, so that's step one, and that's obviously part of BGLiD since day one. And then we have added a biometric scan on top of that. So with the biometric scan, this is exactly how it works. And I'm about to show the demo, but this is how it works. The source document, so a driver's license, a passport, your client is required to take a photo of those. So driver's license front and back, passport just front. Then they are required to take effectively a selfie. Now, what happens is with this, when the selfie comes in, there is basically a check. So there is 24 data points that are checked as part of this biometric scan. So the two ID images, the selfie and the image on the source document are matched, okay? And we basically check those 24 data points and we provide you with a result. So you get a result across that BGL, the biometric scan, to check and see if the person is very consistent with their selfie. Their ID photo is consistent with their selfie. There are also some checks that are done on the document itself. So if there is, signs of fraud, so a passport that might have tearing and things like that, that is also done as well. So not only will you get the government ID verification, you will also get the biometric scan result. All right. So with BGLiD, there's obviously some really important benefits. There's simple access and no lock-in contracts. You pay as you go. You don't have to commit to a minimum. It's obviously made by us, BGL, and it's supported by the BGL support team. So who wants to have a bit of a look? So what I'm going to do is go through now. Unfortunately, I have to show a video because I'm not really prepared to show my ID source documents publicly. But here is effectively how the process works. So we start off inside CAS 360 and in the contact screen of CAS 360. And you can see up in the top right corner, clicking on ID verification. So this is request ID verification, not using the verify source method, but using the request ID verification method. Right, and what we're going to do here is select our biometric scanning options. So I click on select biometric scanning, and it's that easy. Up comes an email. So now we're at the email stage. So all we need to do is put in the particulars of the individual and click request ID verification. Now, when it comes to the particulars of the individual, all you need is their name, address, and email address. That's it. And then they can be added to the system and a request can be sent off. So here is the email step. So this is where we are sending out an email to your client. And that's it. The request has now been sent to your client. And now we are effectively in your client's shoes. So from the CAS 360 side, initiating the request is very, very simple. Now this is what your client will go through. They receive their email. They click on verify identity. And now they are taken straight through to BGLiD. Now this is where they've got a bit of a two-factor code because we don't have enough of them in our life. And straight away for biometric scanning, your client is taken to this screen where they're able to effectively get their phone and scan the QR code. If they're already on a phone, they can put in their mobile phone number and get an SMS to proceed. So both, if they are on their computer, they'll obviously use the QR code. If they're already on their phone or iPad, for example, they can put in their mobile phone number and get a link. From here, this is what your client's workflow will look like. Obviously scanning their QR code, and up comes effectively the biometric scanning process. So first of all, consent. As I said, consent is very important. So the consent step is added in, and then your client gets to choose whether they are going through a driver's license or a passport. So which source document they are using. So here's driver's license. And obviously we've got a fake driver's license here, guys. But effectively a fake driver's license we're using because it's a demo. But this is where you can use your driver's license. No, it doesn't have to be both. You can be one, okay, one source document. But for a driver's license, we need a photo of front and back. So the back of the driver's license will now come through. So we'll add or take a photo of the back of that driver's license. So front and back for driver's license. For passport, it's just obviously the front page. And as I said, you don't need to do both. Your client effectively specifies one. So we go through the process here of verifying the documents, and here comes the selfie. Okay, so the selfie is then taken. Everyone knows how to take selfies, right? And then what will happen is the biometric scanning check is done. So all the details are received, the verification is complete. And now your client goes back over to their computer, for example, says that their session has been completed, and they can close the tab. So your client's work is now done. Your client doesn't need to do anything else. And then it goes back to CAS 360. So inside CAS 360, you will see your notification. As I said, it's an instant notification. We are using dummy data, so of course this is going to fail, but you get your instant verification. You can click on that contact, and we're taken back to the contact screen. We're obviously given our ID verification here has failed, okay, and we've got our ID verification report. But that is effectively how the workflow works. It's very simple to set up and send the email. Your client needs to obviously scan their image, their documents, complete a selfie, click complete, and you will get the result. A couple of questions I'll try to answer here, and if you do have any other questions, please feel free to send them through. I'm happy to take any questions you have, because then I'll talk a bit about pricing. So in regards to pricing, I've got the Australian pricing. So for New Zealand clients, I don't have the New Zealand pricing with me, but it is on our website. So if you go to our BGLiD website, you'll see the pricing. It is slightly different in New Zealand, purely because the government charges us more in New Zealand. But the Australian government ID check is $7. The government ID plus adverse media is $9. And the Australian government ID biometric check is $10. So hopefully that answers the questions. It's all very reasonably priced. What's next for BGLiD? And this is where I want to obviously ask all of you if you are interested in trying out the BGLiD Biometrics. Our BGLiD Biometrics is in beta at the moment, so we're working with a few firms. And if you would like to join the biometrics scanning beta, please let us know. Send me an email. I'll give you my email address in a second. We're looking to release this very early 2025, hopefully Jan, Feb, and make this available to everyone. But if you want access now, let us know. As I've mentioned, you will soon see an integration with Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360. Also, we are looking to push this data through to Zero Practice Manager as well. So, and other apps as well. So we are looking at really providing a lot of integration options around the verification results and being able to share those across firms.